What's up everybody, and thank you for joining me for another video. My name is Whack4863, but you can call me Whack. In today's video, I'm going to go over whether it's better to have raw damage or whether it's better to have another perk in strength. Now, if you guys have been following along with my recent videos, I've been showing you how some of the weapons do more damage than their counterpart legendary weapons that give you a boost in strength. And this is the continuation of that testing. A lot of you guys jumped in the comments of that video and said, well, what would be the point of using a weapon that gives you bonus strength if you're not using that weapon to get to the next perk? So what I did was I did these tests again against each weapon. So what we have is the Ancient Lemurian Axe versus the Axe of the Lion. We have the Dragonbone Maul versus the Hammer of Crom, and we have the Tenderizer versus Ajah's Bane. Now, for those of you that aren't familiar with how the strength perk system works, once you put 30 points in strength and you reach the third perk in strength, you gain an additional 10% damage for having that perk, and that's only on your light attacks. And then once you get 40 points in strength, or fourth perk in strength, you gain an additional 15% damage for that perk on all your heavy attacks. So the way that I did this test was to only put 25 points into strength for the light attack. And that's for both weapons. It doesn't matter whether the weapon gives me an additional 5 points, putting me at the third perk in strength, or the weapon didn't do that and left me at 25. And I did these tests back to back. So the Ancient Lemurian Axe, for example, with 25 points in strength, does a total of 136 damage, where the Axe of the Lion, with spent points in strength at 25 and the additional 5 points in strength from the bonus, did 138. So the Axe of the Lion wins by 2 hit points. That's it, a total of 2 hit points. Now remember that all of the weapons that give you a bonus in strength are legendaries. These are weapons that you have to go out and find in random chests or in chests, the skeleton key chests in the exiled lands. So being able to craft a weapon that does 2 less damage when spending the same amount of points is still really good. So if we look at the heavy attacks for the Ancient Lemurian Axe, we will see that it actually did 174 damage with a heavy attack. Again, only spending 35 points. With the same number of points put into the Axe of the Lion, getting it all the way up to the fourth perk, it does 184 points. So we're looking at a difference of 10 points with that particular attack. So obviously the Axe of the Lion is the clear winner if you are creating a build that requires you to have a weapon that gives you those additional bonus points in strength. However, if you don't use a build that requires you to have those additional bonus points, the Axe of the Lion is not going to win. It is always going to come short of the Ancient Lemurian Axe, unless Funcom decides to change the amount of damage that the Axe of the Lion is doing or the amount of damage that the Ancient Lemurian Axe is doing. But that's just one example. So let's do the exact same thing with the Hammer of Crom and the Dragonbone Maul. Again, spending just 25 attribute points, the Dragonbone Maul will do 113 damage. The Hammer of Crom, with the same number of attribute points spent, is only going to do 110 damage. So it actually does 3 less damage on the light attack. When we get to the heavy, again, spending 35 points in the strength category, the Dragonbone Maul does 192 damage, and the Hammer of Crom does 193 damage. So the Hammer of Crom wins in the heavy attack by 1 point. Now, taking all things into account for both of these weapons, if we look at the Hammer of Crom and we say, but it also gives an additional 5 points in grit, and with only losing 3 hit points on the light attack and actually gaining 1 hit point on the heavy attack, we're going to call this one for the Hammer of Crom. Now, to wrap this whole thing up in a pretty little bow, let's look at the Tenderizer versus Ajah's Bane. Again, only spending 25 points in the strength category. The Tenderizer does 136 damage with a light attack, and Ajah's Bane does 132 damage. So Ajah's Bane does 4 less damage than the Tenderizer for light attacks. Looking at the heavy attacks, the Tenderizer does 232 damage versus Ajah's Bane, which actually does 232 damage. So there is 0 difference between these two maces at the 4th perk in strength with heavy attack. So the Tenderizer actually wins over Ajah's Bane. And again, all of these that I used against these legendary weapons are craftable weapons. Now, while I understand using these weapons to get to a certain perk point, I would say that you are really hindering your ability to do massive amounts of damage if you're not using the weapons that I've mentioned. If you're not using the ancient Lemurian axe built the way that I built it and getting yourself into that 4th perk in strength, you're leaving a lot of damage on the table, and I think you would be better off spending the points in strength and not somewhere else and doing the amount of damage with these weapons as they're intended, because they do crush all of the legendary weapons when you get up to that 4th perk in strength, or when you're not relying on those strength bonuses to get you to that next perk. And even at that, when you do get to those next perks, you guys have seen the numbers here today, it's really not that big of a difference. The largest difference being the Axe of the Lion with an additional 10 points per hit over the ancient Lemurian axe. However, I still say the ancient Lemurian axe would be better all around because it has higher armor penetration than the Axe of the Lion. So depending on what you're fighting against, the Axe of the Lion is not going to do as well as the ancient Lemurian axe. And for the record, all of these tests were done on a thrall that had no armor whatsoever, and so armor was not part of this equation. I just wanted to see damage without armor in general. And for those of you that are still watching the video, there's something you need to know about the direction of the game going forward. I reported the fact that there were mod kits that were dropping in the unnamed city a while back, and I'll link that video in the top right hand corner of this video. Now, those have been taken out of the game since, but what those did were they actually added additional bonus points to your weapon, so you could modify your weapon to get additional bonus points. And I fully expect those to make it in game. The reason why they pulled them out and what was officially announced on the forums was that they were not fully developed and were not ready to be shown in game. However, I do think that we will see these in game 100% at some point in time, so you'll be able to add additional attribute points to your weapons in the future. And that's all I have for this video, but the fun doesn't have to stop here. You can click one of the other videos coming up on the screen to watch next. I hope you've enjoyed this video as much as I've enjoyed making it. I'll catch you next time. Peace. I'd like to give a big shout out to all my YouTube members. Y'all are absolute legends. If you'd like to become a legend, there's a button below that says join. That'll give you all the details. I'd like to thank all my subscribers for their continued support, likes, comments, and general awesomeness. If you're not subscribed, you can start your free trial today and cancel at any time. Clicking the bell is highly recommended so you get notified when I upload another video.